So you are handling MTech Auto, right? Now explain to us how this process under IBC is going to pan out, because the whole talk here is will equity have any value? How these companies are going to go, in this whole IBC process.
So inherently, equity has no value. That's the reason why debt has to take a haircut, and that's the reason why you're in IBC. So clearly, equity has no value, and the whole process of an IB professional is to report to a creditors committee. And the creditors committee, the aim of the creditors committee as well as the IP is to maximize recovery for a creditor.
But that's the textbook definition.
That is the reality also.
Yeah. But is the reality as well, for example, for MTech Auto?
It will be for anybody. So I'll just explain to you in brief. Anybody, including a promoter, would want to preserve value, because almost every promoter has given a personal guarantee. And whatever overflows as a non-recoveries out of the IBC process will actually still remain as an onus to the promoter in terms of his guarantees. So clearly it is very important for any promoter in any of these 12 cases to make sure that they retain value, collaborate with an IP or the bankers or with anybody else. I think everybody is on the same side of the table as far as the IBC process is concerned. Now what will happen in the conflict is that when the resolution plans come on the table within 180 or 270 days, that is when a promoter will also bid for his own assets. Okay. And that is where I think the promoter will move to the other side of the table, so to say, because he will also want to bid for those assets along with external bidders.
So he will also then in that case have to cough up capital.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So at the end of the day, the promoter now is as at par with any other external person who will have the same level of information which an IP will facilitate to bid for a company.
Okay.
But the reality is, in the interim period, both will try to preserve value, because unless value is preserved, the net delta will always fall into a promoter because of his personal guarantees.
No, the reason I asked that question is because, we heard news reports that, for example, Motherson Sumi is looking at MTech Auto's some couple of plants, and, there are 12 bidders for some of these assets, and some of these are nice assets. So, and, in general, you would want promoters to avoid that bankruptcy tag. So, could we have a situation where there is some value for some of these companies?
So I'll tell you one thing. First of all, what is this bankruptcy tag? There are two processes to this bankruptcy code. One is, day one, the promoter is not bankrupt. He is into administration, i.e. insolvency. During that 180-day period, the plans are valid, just that the debt has to be right-sized. Equity is zero, I'm presuming. The debt has to be right-sized for somebody to come and bid for the assets. As you said, some of them are attractive, but they're attractive at the right debt levels. And that's what the IBC process will achieve. After the assets, these attractive assets at the right price are actually palmed out, that's when you start creating equity value.
So, Abhizer, real, quick question here. The market is obviously grappling with how to understand this, because the first time we're getting into something like this. Stock prices have gone completely haywire. I mean, they swing from 20% up to 20% down on any given day. Help us understand this, because you're saying that as of now, in reality, equity should be considered zero. So in which case, what sort of options will start coming on the table, and how should we value equity for these IBC cases?
So the expectation of the market is that there will be a haircut in some of these. The equity will get taken over by somebody more credible, which could be the promoter tying up with a financier.
Or an outright bidder.
Or an outright bidder. And that will create minority shareholder value. That's really where the markets are headed. And that's where the markets are guessing. Now, of course, somebody in the earlier session raised the issue as to where is the capital to actually write down some of these loans. That's the reality. And that's where the uncertainty comes into the system, that while a few banks will be able to take the write-offs, most banks will not be able to take the write-offs. So where will this come? Will this ultimately lead to a liquidation, which is a possibility?
What's the chance of that? That was my question. So an absolute downright asset stripping versus actually getting in new buyers, whether it's the promoter or a new person coming in and buying out the company.
Horses for horses. There are deals where we will certainly have buyers, as you rightly said, some plants of MTech Auto, or currently GTL, for example, the telecom towers company is outright for sale. Now that's going to be an equity value deal. But those are different transactions. Some other plants where the power plant cost is 8 crores a megawatt, there will not be a buyer. Will we wind out?
Just one final question. This is a time-bound, process which is to take place. At what stage are we right now in all the 12 deals, as per your understanding?
Frankly, most of them we are about to file.
In the NCLT courts?
The NCLT courts haven't even. I don't think under the RBI directive, not a single application has yet been filed for the 12, except for I think Standard Chartered got filed, but it got filed outside of the RBI process. It got filed by somebody else.
Okay.
Standard Chartered filed it for SR.
Okay.
Apart from that, I think the filing process is yet to start. What's happened is that the consultant, the IP appointments kind of have been shortlisted.
Okay.
But the filings are yet to happen.
Okay. The NCLT decision can only be challenged in Supreme Court, right? And in that sense...
NCLAT decision can only be challenged in Supreme Court.
Okay.
And that will be a 14-day, after the 14-day.
And you know, the sense I got was that most likely Supreme Court will just accept the decision and dismiss the petition.
So NCLT decisions are primarily based on whether a default has occurred or no. That's the only thing that is checking really while admitting a petition. I think that's a matter of fact. More or less, NCLT decisions are taken in, unless promoters, so we had initial promoters kind of questioning constitutional validity of the IBC and all that. That's all sorted out.
All right, Abhizer. Thanks a lot for joining us. Of course, we'll keep